It was a night drenched in elegance, the kind of evening that dripped with extravagance, where every detail was meticulously crafted to impress. The dining room sparkled with crystal chandeliers, casting prisms of light across the polished mahogany table, set with fine china and glittering silverware. I could hardly believe I was invited to this opulent family dinner. As I walked through the grand foyer, past towering columns adorned with intricate carvings, I couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in my own family. My heart raced, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling together. After years of feeling invisible among my affluent relatives, tonight should have been a moment of warmth, a chance to connect. But deep down, I knew that the evening would likely hold more shadows than light. Seated at the table were my parents, as dignified as ever, radiating the kind of authority that wealth brings. Next to them sat my brother, Ryan, a man I once admired, but who had recently transformed into a figure I hardly recognized. Just a few months ago, he had been promoted to CEO of our family's enterprise, a position that elevated him from being the golden child to the shining star of our family's empire. His power and status had changed him, and I couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of resentment bubbling beneath my surface. As the dinner commenced, the conversation danced around topics that felt foreign to me: mergers, investments, and strategic plans. I knew I was expected to remain quiet, an obligation of sorts, but tonight was different. The air crackled with tension, and each course served felt heavier than the last. With every laugh shared between my parents and Ryan, the weight of my inadequacy pressed down on me, suffocating my spirit. And then it happened. The moment that would be etched in my mind forever, a moment that shattered any remaining sense of belonging I had. Someone at the table made a joke, a harmless ribbing intended for amusement. I decided to add my 2 cents, attempting to lighten the mood with a quip of my own. I thought that maybe just this once I could break through the barrier that separated me from my family. "Come on, Ryan, you can't be serious," I laughed, hoping to share a moment of levity. But the laughter died instantly, replaced by a suffocating silence. Ryan turned to me, his gaze sharper than a knife, and with a tone that oozed condescension, he said, "Seriously, can you just stay quiet for once? We're discussing important matters here." His words hung in the air like a lead weight, and the heat of humiliation burned my cheeks. I could feel my parents shift uncomfortably, neither defending me nor supporting him, straddling the line of familial loyalty. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile as I felt the sting of tears welling up in my eyes. "Right, of course. Sorry," I muttered, pulling my gaze down to my untouched plate, hot anger mixed with an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. In that moment, I was not just silenced. I was reduced to a ghost at my own family dinner, a shadow drifting beneath the radiance of their wealth and success. The conversation resumed around me as if I had never spoken. Ryan continued sharing his vision for the company, boasting about upcoming projects and financial forecasts. I felt invisible, just a reminder of the estrangement that had been building for years. I slid lower in my chair, trying to shrink away into the plush upholstery, wishing I could disappear. The laughter echoed around me, yet I felt entirely isolated as each chuckle and cheer felt like a dagger meant for my heart. It was sickening, watching my brother gleam with ambitious desires and unyielding confidence, while I remained steadfastly mired in the shadows, lost in the creases of my own worthlessness. After what felt like an eternity, the dinner finally reached its conclusion, but it did little to lift my spirits. As the plates were cleared and dessert was served, I hoped for a moment that things could take a different turn. Maybe Ryan would notice my discomfort and apologize, or perhaps my parents would recognize the tension in the air. But instead, they couldn't have been more oblivious, lost in their own celebration of his achievements. Then, as if the universe mocked my plight, the CEO of the company, a high-powered, well-dressed woman, entered the dining room. She was the embodiment of success, greeting Ryan with admiration that only amplified my feelings of insignificance. "Ryan, I'm so glad to see you. You've done an incredible job," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with pride. My brother, now the center of attention, beamed at her words. To my astonishment, she didn't acknowledge my presence at all. In the face of such an overt display of wealth and status, I felt the walls of the room closing in around me. I sat there, a forgotten child at a banquet, painfully aware that I was no longer part of their world. But as they engaged in enthusiastic conversation, I held onto the flicker of determination igniting within me. This dinner, this humiliation, it couldn't be the end of my story. Tonight only deepened my resolve. I would redefine my identity outside of the suffocating shadows of my family. If you've ever been underestimated by family, you'll understand every part of what happened next, I thought, steeling myself for what was to come. I would no longer be the quiet one, the invisible sibling swept aside in favor of my brother's grandeur. I was determined to rise from these ashes to reclaim my narrative. As the clinking of glasses and haughty laughter faded into the background, I felt the first stirrings of my future ambitions. The night may have been filled with wealth, but I would find a way to wield my own power. The seeds of change were planted, and while the idea of confronting my family felt terrifying, I knew deep down that it was exactly what I needed. With a newfound resolve, I prepared for the battles ahead. The game was far from over, and I would ensure they recognized my worth, not just as their sibling but as someone capable of wielding influence and strength. This was only the beginning. As the dessert was served, a lavish chocolate torte with raspberry coulis, I forced myself to take a bite, though my mind was elsewhere. The rich flavors that danced on my tongue felt like a cruel contrast to the bitterness in my heart. Ryan was animatedly discussing his latest endeavor, a bold expansion into renewable energy, and the way my parents leaned in, their eyes sparkling with pride, made my stomach churn. The adoration they poured onto him was a stark reminder of my own perceived shortcomings. Honestly, it's the future, isn't it? Ryan continued, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. We're positioning ourselves to be industry leaders. It's about time the family legacy evolved. His words dripped with a confidence that both inspired and infuriated me. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on my chest, the overwhelming belief that I was somehow inferior, simply because I had not followed the same path he had. Suddenly, a thought struck me: was there something wrong with my approach to life? I had always played it safe, living in the shadows of my brother's brilliance. But then, a flicker of defiance ignited within me. What if I didn't have to conform to their expectations? What if I could carve out my own identity, one that had nothing to do with the family business or my brother's achievements? As I listened to my family praise Ryan, comparisons began to swirl in my mind. Look at how dedicated Ryan is, my father said, gesturing as if the air around him were filled with Ryan's success. He works day in and day out, and it shows. The words stung as they reverberated in my ears. It was always about Ryan's dedication, his hard work, while I was left to grapple with my own perceived laziness. Mom, Dad, I've been working too, I finally managed to interject, surprised by the sudden boldness of my voice. Just not in the same way. My parents turned to me, eyes wide in surprise. It was a moment of vulnerability yet strength. I felt a tremor run through me, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Oh, honey, we know you're busy," my mother replied, her tone soothing yet dismissive. "But it's different when you're in a position like Ryan's." Ryan smirked, flashing a self-satisfied grin that hit me like a punch to the gut. He didn't even bother to hide his disdain. "What exactly are you doing besides, well, whatever it is you do?" He chuckled, the laughter of my parents ringing in my ears, each chuckle a reminder of my supposed inadequacy. But this time I didn't let his comment shake me. I had spent too long allowing my brother's arrogance to define my worth. There had to be more to me than the invisible sibling. I began to reflect on my own interests and talents, buried under years of family expectations. I had always enjoyed art and design, particularly in marketing strategies, something I had kept quiet about, fearing it would be dismissed as trivial compared to my brother's corporate aspirations. As the dinner progressed, I found myself tuning in to the conversation differently. Instead of feeling like the odd one out, I started to analyze Ryan's every word. "We're looking at securing a major contract," he boasted, "which would really solidify our standing in the industry. What if I had pursued my passion for marketing? What if I could combine my love for creativity with business acumen?" A surge of possibilities rushed through me, overwhelming yet exhilarating. I had always admired successful campaigns and innovative branding strategies, but I never considered that I could create them myself. My mind raced with ideas, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Suddenly, I remembered an online course I had been eyeing for months, a program focused on entrepreneurial marketing. I had brushed it off as a dream not meant for me, but maybe it was time to stop living in the shadows. The thought ignited a fire within, stirring a hunger for independence. As the table cleared and the conversation shifted to quieter post-dinner topics, I found my voice again. Ryan, I've been thinking about exploring some marketing projects myself, I said, cautiously testing the waters. Maybe even creating a brand that focuses on sustainable products. Ryan raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. That's cute, but do you really think you could compete with what I'm doing? The laughter that followed felt like daggers, but I held my ground. I think I could actually, I replied, my heart pounding with each word. It's about time I find my own path. My brother's expression faltered for a moment, surprise flickering across his face before he masked it with his usual bravado. The shift in power dynamics was subtle, but for the first time I could sense a shift in the room. My parents' eyes darted between us, a silent acknowledgement that perhaps the balance was tipping. Good luck with that, Ryan finally said, dismissing my ambitions with a wave of his hand. But in the back of my mind, I felt a swell of defiance. I didn't need his approval. I was beginning to recognize my worth beyond their judgments, and it felt liberating. As the evening wound down, I stood at the threshold of a new beginning. There was a world outside the confines of my family's expectations, one where I could thrive on my terms. The notion of independence danced tantalizingly in front of me, and for the first time I felt ready to embrace it. With a newfound resolve, I stepped outside into the cool night air, the stars twinkling overhead. It was as if the universe was encouraging me to forge my own path, to rise from the shadows and claim my place. I didn't need anyone's permission to pursue my dreams, and as I breathed in the fresh air, I felt lighter. If I'm going to make my mark, it's time to stop waiting for approval, I whispered to myself, a promise echoing in the depths of my heart. I was ready to break free from the expectations that had long held me captive. The journey ahead would not be easy, but I was finally prepared to step into my own light. As the last fork clinked against the plate, I braced myself for the turmoil that I sensed was brewing beneath the surface. My parents had always projected an air of calm, but tonight, their excitement for Ryan's successes felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an inevitable confrontation. I could see it in the way they exchanged glances, a conspiratorial energy that sent a shiver down my spine. Speaking of expansion, Ryan said, leaning forward with that smug grin plastered across his face, we're looking to sell off the old family estate. You know, the one Grandma's place. My stomach dropped at the mention of the sprawling property where so many childhood memories resided. The estate wasn't just a piece of real estate. It was a treasure trove of family history, laughter, and love. I had always believed it held a special significance for all of us, but as I glanced at my parents' eager expressions, I couldn't shake the feeling that my sentimentality was viewed as weakness. Oh, we could really use the funds to fuel our projects, my mother chimed in, her enthusiasm palpable. Plus, it's been sitting empty for years, it's time to let go. Let go? You mean sell it off to the highest bidder? I interjected, my voice trembling with indignation. You can't just sell Grandma's house, it belongs to all of us. Ryan's laughter rang through the dining room, sharp and cutting. What are you even talking about? He said, feigning innocence. That place is a liability, you wouldn't understand the business side of things. The humiliation washed over me like a cold wave. My parents' eyes flicked between Ryan and me, and I could see their disapproval simmering just below the surface. You need to learn to value the bigger picture, my father said, his tone dismissive. It's not just about nostalgia. Bigger picture, I echoed incredulously. What about our family's history? What about the memories we made there? Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills, Ryan retorted, crossing his arms. You're lucky to be in this family at all. Stop acting like you deserve a say. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, the fire of defiance igniting within me. No longer was I the invisible sibling. No longer would I let them dictate my worth. I do deserve a say, I declared, my voice steady and louder than I had intended. And you don't get to decide what happens to something that belongs to me too. That estate is part of my heritage. The air in the room shifted, a tense silence wrapping around us. My mother's face paled slightly, the reality of my words settling in. Honey, let's not escalate this, she said, her voice tinged with worry. Do you really think you can just sell it without my consent? I pressed, my heart racing. You've treated me like I'm nothing, but I'm not just some afterthought. I have a stake in this family, too. Ryan's expression shifted from amusement to annoyance. What stake? You've never shown any interest in the family business, he shot back, his facade cracking. You've got no claim to it. With a surge of confidence, I leaned forward, lowering my voice to a whisper but with a piercing intensity. Actually, I do. I've been quietly investing in the family business for years. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Gasps erupted around the table, and I could feel their disbelief weigh heavily in the air. It was a gamble revealing this hidden truth, but something in me knew it was time to stop hiding. It was time to reclaim my identity. Investing? My mother echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. While you've all been busy with Ryan's ventures, I've been quietly building my own portfolio. I own a significant share of the family business, and I plan to use it. Ryan's composure shattered, his eyes widening in shock. You're bluffing, he spat, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. You have no proof. I have all the proof I need, I replied, feeling a sense of empowerment wash over me. If you want to sell that estate, you'll have to go through me first. My parents exchanged glances, uncertainty clouding their expressions. The atmosphere around the table felt electric, charged with a tension I had never experienced before. This isn't how we handle family matters, my father said, his voice low and tense. Then maybe it's time for a change, I said firmly. You've treated me like a shadow for too long. I'm done playing that role. Suddenly, the door swung open and a tall figure stepped into the room, Ryan's CEO, a man I had only met a few times but had heard countless stories about. His presence commanded attention. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, scanning the table with curiosity. The shift in dynamics felt palpable. I could see Ryan's face twist with anxiety as he struggled to regain control of the narrative. Not at all, he said, forcing a smile. We were just discussing some family matters. The CEO's eyes landed on me, and I felt a strange sense of validation in that moment. What's your take on the estate situation? He asked, genuinely interested. I took a deep breath, ready to seize the opportunity. It's a vital piece of our family legacy, I stated, glancing at Ryan, who was now visibly sweating. And I believe we should honor it, not exploit it. The CEO nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Smart, sentimentality can often lead to better business decisions. It's important to know the value of what you have. In that moment, I could see the wheels turning in the minds of my parents and Ryan. The facade was cracking, and I had planted a seed of doubt. Perhaps the power dynamic was about to shift, and for the first time, I felt a sense of control over my own narrative. As the conversation around the table erupted into chaos, with Ryan trying desperately to regain his footing, I realized I was no longer the invisible sibling. I had carved out my own space at the table, and there was no turning back now. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to fight for my place in this family. And as I looked around at the faces of my relatives, I knew that the true battle had only just begun. As I sat there, the atmosphere thick with tension, I felt a sense of empowerment coursing through me. My heart raced, but this time it was not from fear or humiliation, it was anticipation. I had finally found my voice and I was ready to use it. I have all the proof I need, I repeated, locking eyes with Ryan, who was now visibly sweating. The confidence in my tone was alien yet exhilarating. Proof of what? Ryan snapped, attempting to regain his composure while his facade crumbled. I could see the arrogance that once defined him begin to fade, replaced by panic. You're just bluffing. You can't just throw around claims without evidence. Actually, I can, I said, my voice steady. You see, while you've been busy expanding your empire, I've been quietly financing your lavish lifestyle. I hold the legal rights to the family estate and a significant stake in the family business. I've been the silent partner, the one you all underestimated. Gasps erupted around the dining table. My parents' faces transformed from smug pride to confusion and disbelief. I could see the gears turning in my mother's mind, processing the reality of what I had just revealed. You own a part of the business?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "Yes," I confirmed, relishing the moment. "And I've been doing it quietly while you all dismissed me as the lesser sibling. I didn't want to overshadow Ryan's achievements, but you've pushed me to a point where I can no longer remain silent." The room fell silent. The only sound was the ticking of the ornate clock on the wall, marking the seconds as they dragged on. My father, once the embodiment of authority, now looked at me with a mixture of shock and concern. "How could you keep this from us?" he finally asked, his tone shifting from accusatory to bewildered. "You had an obligation to share this with your family." "An obligation?" I scoffed, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You've never given me a reason to believe I mattered. You've treated me like an outsider, like someone who didn't belong. Why would I feel the need to share anything? You've dismissed my worth time and again." Ryan's face turned a shade of crimson, his earlier bravado evaporating. "This isn't fair," he protested weakly. "You can't just come in here and claim ownership when you've never been a part of the business." "Is that so?" I countered, feeling emboldened. "What do you think your expansion projects have been funded by? The generosity of your parents?" "No, Ryan, my investments have been the backbone of your success. I've been paying for your lifestyle while you've been busy belittling me." "Enough," my father shouted, the frustration evident in his voice. "We need to handle this matter as a family. You can't just drop a bombshell like this and expect everything to be fine." "Fine," I echoed incredulously. "You think I'm here to make peace with a family that has never valued me? You've treated me like a ghost in this house, and I refuse to let you do it any longer. It's time for the truth to come out, and I'm done being the quiet one." Just then, the door swung open, and an unexpected figure stepped into the room, Mr. Thompson, the family attorney. He had been a silent observer through the years, often sitting in the shadows while my family made decisions regarding our legacy. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his voice calm yet authoritative. "I believe there are some matters we need to clarify." My family turned in unison, surprise etched across their faces. "Mr. Thompson?" my mother questioned, her voice shaky. "What are you doing here?" "I've been reviewing the family business records," he started, his eyes scanning the room. "And it appears there has been a significant misunderstanding regarding ownership and investments." He gestured towards me. "You see, the shares you thought belonged solely to Ryan and your parents are, in fact, divided. A substantial portion is held by our dear sibling here." Ryan's mouth dropped open, and I could see the realization dawning upon him. "That can't be possible," he stuttered, desperation creeping into his voice. "You're lying." Mr. Thompson shook his head. "I assure you, I've verified the documents. Your name has been a silent partner in the family business for years, and the legal rights to the estate are indeed shared. You've leveraged funds that were not solely yours to claim." The room erupted in chaos as my parents processed the shocking news. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and my father's face twisted in disbelief. "How could this happen?" my father murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's simple," I replied, the fire within me igniting further. "You underestimated me. You thought I was just the quiet sibling, the one who would always follow your lead. But I've been building my own path, and I'm ready to claim my place in this family." With the revelation hanging in the air, I felt a shift in the dynamics around the table. The tension that had once suffocated me began to dissipate as my family grappled with the new reality. I could see respect dawning in their eyes, a recognition of my worth that had long been denied. "From this moment on, I will not be silenced," I declared, my voice resonating with newfound authority. "The family estate will not be sold without my consent, and I intend to be involved in the future of our business. It's time for us to work together, not against each other." As I spoke, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. No longer was I the underdog, the overlooked sibling. I had transformed into a powerful individual, ready to reclaim my identity and assert my place within this family. The night ended with a mix of emotions, shock, anger, and perhaps a hint of admiration. As we sat in the aftermath of the revelation, a new chapter was beginning. I had learned that my worth was not defined by the opinions of others, but by my actions and determination. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild our family dynamics. There were still challenges ahead, but I felt empowered to face them head-on. I had learned that true wealth lies not in material possessions but in the strength of one's character and the bonds of family. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more stories where the underdog finally gets the justice they deserve.